morning, everyone, and hello to some people that I have known from before I left Creative Edinburgh, but also it's really nice to be back and seeing some new people. We this morning have some great guest speakers along. We've got Stacey Hunter and Jenny Hazel, both people working very much in the Edinburgh creative scene and have kind of been part of the foundations of this like new generation of creatives and collaborations happening in the city currently. So it's really great to have you both along, and I'm really so happy to be chatting to you this morning. So I'm going to do some brief intros for both of you, but usually it never does anyone any justice. Usually there needs to be more stuff followed up by the person themselves. So apologies if I don't do justice, but I'm sure we will. So we've got Stacey Hunter here. So Stacey curates and produces within a contemporary design context. Her collaborative exhibitions and projects are known and appreciated for their unconventional approach and broad appeal. She is committed to the development of design culture in Scotland and in enlivening design and craft discourses. She's founded Local Heroes, which many of you may have heard of, to present the work of outstanding designers working in Scotland, and collaborates with the diverse range of organisations from airports and art hubs to hotels, hospitals and festivals. So Dr. Stacey Hunter of Local Heroes, everyone, welcome. And we have the lovely Jenny Hazel, who's a freelance events planner and floral designer with Wild Posy Events. So Jenny has spent 8 years as a freelance event photographer, 5 years as a creative hub director and manager at Hill Street Design House, which some may have heard of, and 2 years as event sales manager at Dovecot Studios. Having realized during lockdown that returning to the office was not desirable, she has recently launched Wild Posy Events and is working as a freelance events planner and floral designer. So welcome, Jenny, as well. It's so nice to have you. Great. Well, so let's just get straight to it, I guess. So there's a lot to talk about, I guess, within your respective fields. But you both are you work in this environment where you are. It's part of the course to collaborate and to work with people doing very, very different things that kind of help to build this overall picture that's being brought to the fore. So I think I'll start with Stacey, but Jenny, please feel free to jump in. These kinds of collaborative projects, things that you've worked on at Local Heroes, I'm sure there's plenty of examples in there. Would you argue they're based on relationships and both of the skill set and the work itself, so whatever the form is that the work is taking, but also of the people behind the work? And I wondered if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jenny and I have commented before, because we've worked together loads, like both informally and formally. Like, I think this is probably true for quite a lot of people who work in the creative industries, that there isn't like a firm, hard line between your friendships and your work kind of friendships, the way that there maybe are if you're like a dentist or something like that, you know. So really, if I get on really well with someone and I feel like we're on the same page and we have a similar kind of aesthetic and things like that, I'm really up for collaborating, you know, with people. So sometimes, you know, they'll ask me or I'll ask them, and yeah, I think I just get kind of drawn to people who are doing exciting projects. And I guess like with Local Heroes, there's a sort of set of values that underpin everything that I'm trying to do, which is about trying to promote designers in what I consider to be sort of like the right way, like a responsible way and a fair way where, you know, people are looked after and they're taken care of and their work is, you know, promoted in the best way possible. So I'm naturally drawn to other people that have got those values too. So it's really intuitive, I think, and really just kind of natural. And I think in Edinburgh and the rest of Scotland, like we've got this amazing kind of ecosystem where people come in and out, and yeah, you hear about people doing projects, you hear about them sort of through the grapevine. And if you happen to come into contact with them, and Creative Edinburgh is a great like catalyst for that, I suppose. Like rubbing up against people either on social media or like in real life, and getting to find out what they're up to. And yeah, I think that I'll stop talking actually and let Jenny interject, because I've got a tendency to I could keep talking about collaborating with people forever. So Jenny should jump in.
No, I would just say, like, specifically in working with you, Stacey, I think you're right with the intuition in general and everything. But with us, when we work together, we do bring something different personality wise as well, because Stacey's like hyper analytical and really sort of detail orientated, and then I'm a bit more kind of like I don't know, we're just like a good team because we are quite different. I mean, we're good friends in real life, so in real life outside of work. But I think that is a big part of it as well, is people's personalities. When if you're working together, you've either got to have the same, well, you've both got the same goal, but you've either got to have the same outlook of it or have contrasting outlooks, so that the end result is going to be something sort of that's truly a collaboration, rather than just your idea with somebody else's input, you know. But I did feel, especially with Hill Street Design House, which is where I first met Stacey, she was one of my first tenants. What I noticed there, not only with my own network, but with all the tenants in the house, is just naturally by being in the same building and all having different skills and just chatting to each other, they ended up just utilising each other to help them with projects, and then that grew and grew, and then those people invite their extended network in, and those people start collaborating together. And I think it is quite, in creative industries, it is fairly natural thing to do. But yeah, again, I'll stop talking because I have a tendency to ramble too.
Oh no, you both apologizing, but we want to hear you ramble. This is why you're here. No, that's so great, and I really like what you're both talking about there around that kind of fundamental baseline of values and trust that kind of is so important for anyone collaborating with anyone. But you need to have almost it can't just be about the work. There also has to be this other element of the person behind it, and how they approach their collaborative process with you and the other people in the space that you're working. I guess my next question is really, how do you manage that? Because when you're running these large events, and I know from seeing, being at and seeing local heroes exhibitions come about, but also I know that Jenny, your new business is getting up and running, and these are things you're having to consider moving forward with your business, as well as how do you kind of bring people into that fold? How do you pick people to collaborate with and manage those relationships, particularly in relation to who takes the lead, who keeps everyone accountable? So whoever wants to jump in with any thoughts around that, please do.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, with the new things that I'm doing, the floral design is fairly new to me. I've always been interested in it, and I'm really keen, green fingers and everything. But with that side of the business, I'm reaching out to people who I admire their work already, and asking them if I can come and assist them and just learn from them, but at the same time building up my own portfolio. And I'm doing these reef workshops this week. So in that, I'm very, very happy for someone else to take the leads. But with events, I'm working at the moment with Mercedes at Scarlet and Bell quite a lot, which are big events. And although I'm just a natural, I take control even if I'm not really supposed to in those situations, because I find if I have a list of things to do, I do kind of just jump into a leadership role with events and things. But I know that when I've worked with Stacey, we swap over. I think if we see the other person is maybe overwhelmed or starting not to see the bigger picture, then we'll take the lead and say, hang on, step back and take a breath, and I'll do this, and it just gives you a bit of perspective again, and then when the other person's exhausted, then you can step in. So I think it does, for me, depend. I don't know about you, Stacey.
I think I'm going to give like a big, long, complicated answer. I would say that like when I used to work for an employer, which was great, and that's where like I trained in public programming and curating, and it was a great job, but one of my biggest frustrations was that I didn't have creative autonomy. I didn't have enough kind of, like I couldn't see a project right through necessarily, like from beginning to end in the way that I saw that it should be done, or what I didn't get maybe the outcome that I wanted from it. And really that frustration is what sort of drove me in a positive way to work for myself. And working for myself, like you would think that if the reason that someone wanted to work for themselves was because they were frustrated at not being in control of things, would mean that they're unlikely to collaborate with people. But it's actually been the opposite for me, because working for myself, I've realized that, I love, all of my projects are in partnership with multiple people, like all the way through from beginning to end. And I love that process. But I think like it's different for everyone. But for me, I have a really strong creative vision at the start of a project, typically. And what I do is I make sure that anyone that I'm bringing into the project who is going to be like working for me as a sort of like a paid freelancer kind of thing, I'll have a really clear description of roles and responsibilities right at the outset, as a way of just like everyone kind of managing their expectations about what their role is. And it's also a really good way for someone at that point to kind of say, oh, well, I actually have experience in this as well, and I could help with that. And I think it all comes down to kind of like authorship and a sort of editorial slant. Like some people are not as fussed about how things look as they are about how they operate. So we've all been to lots of events that maybe have like run like clockwork, but they're not necessarily, you wouldn't take photos for your Instagram of them because like they don't particularly look like completely unusual or amazing. And I think like for Jenny and I, we're both just such visual people that we want the full package. We want any event that we do or any activity or any kind of design-led experience or exhibition to look, even smell, like we'll even like make sure that the room that people are coming into smells nice, because it's just really important to us. And yeah, I think that for me, like the key to kind of successful collaborations with photographers and clients and graphic designers and all the different sorts of people that I work with is not being afraid to just state like, I want to lead on this. This is my vision. This is how I see my role. Like I'm the creative director. This is like where I want this to go. And I think that I see, I'm saying this to hopefully be like, something that might be useful, but I see a lot of people, I don't know if it's like a Scottish thing, like maybe a confidence thing, but I see a lot of people that, to me, it seems like they're afraid to ask for the role that they want in a situation. Like they don't want to seem pushy, or they don't feel qualified, or whatever it is. And I would say, like, if you're really passionate about wanting a particular role in a situation, like speak up, but then, just be aware that the person that you're collaborating with like might not see you in that role, and that's fine. But yeah, I think the opportunity for that discussion is at the beginning. And for me, it just works really well doing things like that, like just having a really open conversation with people about, what each individual person's kind of role is going to be, so that no one's kind of disappointed or feels that they don't have time to shine or they don't have the opportunity. Because I think actually when people are really clear about what's expected of them, that is the opportunity to shine, because you can just do the thing that you need to do really, really well, manage it really well, and execute it beautifully.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's amazing when you find people like that as well, that you can you work with, and then you can trust them. Because one thing I think people struggle with in leadership is delegation of roles. And I see it all the time, people becoming overwhelmed with the tasks, and I've got zero problem in delegating things to people. And I think but then you have to let them do it. And obviously you oversee that it's going well, but not to, stand over them and watch them, and being able to have that trust, going back to the trust thing again, is super important. Because if you're trying to do everything on a project and have control of everything, you can't then see your end vision. You've got to be able to keep sight of the goal, rather than get bogged down in something that might go a little bit wrong, and then you're behind on absolutely everything else. So for me, having people around me that I believe in their work, and I know they can do whatever their skill set is, that's super important for me.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting, because you both come from these different angles, but you're both very much working in creating experience for people, like physical experience, for people to be enveloped by, I guess is the best word I can think of. I wonder, so you both talked about almost how like you're both quite comfortable in a leadership role from what I'm hearing, but and whether that's delegation or complete control, there's that to work with, but within a collaborative context. When you're building these experiences, how much of it are you focused on simply being the outcome of what you're working towards, or the experience of actually the building process? Because with so many people involved, so many people coming from different backgrounds, there's a lot of learning to be had, there's a lot of shared skills, there's a lot of knowledge sharing, and I just wondered, what's your experience of that, and is that hard to manage?
I was just thinking about this last night, that it sort of just popped into my head. Well, it's been sort of brewing the past couple of weeks, but I realized that it is the building process that I enjoy, and I really enjoy the final event and seeing everything having been brought together, and seeing people walk in and really enjoy themselves, and be like, wow, and experience it. But for me, I think the job is almost over by before the doors open, or before the public are there, because I really enjoy thinking of, oh, wait a minute, I know how to do this a better way, and I'll get this person in, and and then seeing it all happen, and as you say, sort of learning from other people. Oh, that's how you do that, so the next time you can do it yourself, or get someone else in to do that in a more economical way or easier way. So for me, it's the building. I do like seeing pictures of it, but by that point I'm usually too exhausted to enjoy it in the same way that a customer or guest would. So it's the building, for me.
How about for you, Stacey?
I've kind of like the last year has been like a really hectic year for me, like really busy, but I've been able to try some quite different things, and I've been able to work with people, with clients actually, in a more collaborative way, which has been really nice. So for V&A Dundee, we collaborated on a project, myself and the commercial team, to create like a range of products this summer. So we did 3 limited edition beach towels and 3 limited edition wildflower seed packets. So we worked with 6 different designers in total for each to design each souvenir, plus the graphic designer who created like the day trippers identity, plus the designer in Dundee who customized some beautiful Copenhagen cargo bikes for us. So the bikes were like kind of mobile exhibitions that went around showing people and selling souvenirs. And then because that project went really well, V&A Dundee asked us to collaborate with them on a Christmas photo shoot. This was back in August when it was still really warm. And it was really nice because, yeah, I was working with Alan Birch, who was at the time the retail manager at B&A Dundee, and Jenny came into that project too because we needed like Christmas sort of foliage for the photo shoot. So Jenny had obviously just was starting to kind of build up, experience in that area, which was just at the right time for that project. But it was really nice because it was just really nice for me to be able to work with my client in that really, like, rather than just sort of getting a brief through and then executing it, like he was there, we collaborated a lot on like what all the products were going to be that we were going to use in the photo shoot, even kind of sourcing some of them. We had lots of chats about all the kind of like narrative for the different shots that we were doing, and I really enjoyed that. Like, I think the more that you can get to know and collaborate with your client, the better. It doesn't always work out like that because some people are just really busy and the reason they're hiring you is because they don't have time for it. But I think increasingly, I guess it comes back to that thing of values again. It's like, it seems to me more and more that I'm drawing the kind of clients I want because they must see something in what we're doing that they like, that somehow just brings the right people kind of to the door, which is a really nice outcome. And I suppose that sounds a bit kind of I don't know, like a bit out there, but I
think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Is that if you're doing the work you want to do with your strong sort of vision that you're talking about, then it will bring clients that you'd want to work with in, because that's the same aesthetic that they have and that you share. So that it's a completely valid point, I think.
Absolutely. And just to chime in, I mean, I think it gives people consistency as well, and they know where the conversation starts. And it's, that's the collaboration, is seeing where it goes. So I think I totally agree with that perspective, Stacey and Jenny, I really do. But it's really interesting to see how you guys have approached it, and the way you think about it in your own minds as well, as people who are kind of organizing all the mechanics of these things. I guess I don't know how much time we've got left, but I was wondering what would be, how do I phrase this question? What have you learned? What would you say is like the key takeaway that you've had from working in these collaborative environments, whether it's past projects or new projects? I guess, Jenny, you're kind of in this new space. So is there something that you've learned off the back very quickly in the recent months, or is there something that from these collaborative projects that you feel
I think Stacey's probably going to give a much more academic answer than me. I would say that I've always found kind of networking quite easy, because to me it's just chatting about things. It's not necessarily going in with the target of working with that person. It's just getting to know them, and so that you're sort of on the radar and making new friends. So, and I would just say that I've found everybody that I've contacted about floral design or floristry so friendly, and I've found these groups I didn't know existed. Like there's Ochre Botanical Studios in Granton. I've got a garden which is a community garden run by a collective of florists, of local florists, and you can go and volunteer there. But they all share ideas, and they share, suppliers, because we're all wanting to use Scottish cut flowers or from the borders, or pretty local produce. And I've just found everybody so helpful. And I would say just don't be afraid to approach people. Most people are friendly, and if they're not, you don't have to speak to them again. Just just put yourself out there as this is what I'm doing and this is what I am. And Stacey actually gave me a massive sort of confidence chat quite early on in me saying, I want to do it, but I'm not trained as a florist and everything. And Stacey just said, well, you are a florist, that's what you're doing. So just tell people I am a florist. You don't have to apologize for not having trained for years at a school or anything. If that's what you're doing, that's what you are. And just have a bit of confidence in yourself, I would say, and approach people.
Yeah, I think I always think about a friend of mine years ago who was a makeup artist, and she worked for Mac, she's behind the counter in a department store in Glasgow. And she showed me one day all her portfolio of photos of stuff that she had been doing in her spare time over the years. And I'd known her for years and I had never seen it. And it was amazing, like absolutely amazing. And I was like, why are you not sort of like why are you not sort of doing like more of this kind of thing? Because you're obviously really good at it. She was like, oh, well, I haven't been to like college to do it or whatever, and I'm not as qualified as other people. And I was like, this is the only things between like stopping you from like being the thing that you want to be is that idea that you can't, because you're already doing it. And like the more you do it, like if you kind of like hand out business, if you get a business card made and you hand it out to people, and you maybe go part-time at your other job, and then Jenny and I know numerous creative people who kept their part-time job going so they didn't have to make the jump into freelance like immediate, because financially obviously it's not an easy thing transition to do. And I can't think of any of the people that we've known who've done that who haven't eventually maybe kept some of the part-time work going as well, because that can be useful, but they have went on to be the type of creative that they wanted to be, whether it was photographer or stylist or whatever. It's like I always say, it's like, don't wait for someone to give you permission, because there's no one out there whose job it is to give permission for stuff, like you'll be waiting forever. And yeah, I'm a big fan of people, like if you've got confidence in what you're doing, and you have a sense that there's a market for it, however small, it doesn't really matter, or large, you can grow that. And it's one of the best things I think that you can possibly do, is like convince people to pay you to do something that you really love, and that that is really hard work as well. But there's sort of no better feeling than that. And I would really encourage people that are like maybe listening to this and thinking about jumping into something slightly different. Like you don't have to like rebrand or like completely rewrite your LinkedIn profile. You can just try it out and just start doing it, and then see how you get on.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom there. I hope everyone's writing that down. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you're talking about there really speaks to the other creatives as well, because when you come into a space as a new person, you're doing a new thing, or you're not a new person, you're a person presenting a new thing or presenting yourself in a new way, there's the fear of acceptance that you're talking about, that fear of being rejected, or like you're going to be ousted as a faker, or
Yeah.
not do it, what are you doing, this is not what you do, or making jobs up as well, new things that people hadn't thought of yet, and making those connections. And it bamboozles people when you make those introductions and they're like, what? Oh, you might want to explain that a bit more. So I think like there's something in the community of creatives that creates like a really nurturing environment for anyone who's testing and trying things out, because it's all about curiosity and finding things out about how people do things differently, and learning from them. And I wonder, do you feel that looking for opportunities for collaborative projects is a good way for people who are at the beginning of their career to kind of flesh out what they're looking to do, test themselves? What is that? What do you feel that environment offers the people in that position?
Yeah, I think 100%. And like when I was starting out, like my first job, like I wasn't in the curatorial team. I was like I did a kind of more sort of like events organization role, like a junior role, and I used to volunteer to help the curators, like when they were preparing to put up an exhibition, and I would just paint walls white, and I would sweep the floor, and I would stay back late to help them tidy up and stuff. So I just kind of like I'm always a big, I think just like offer to help, like I don't know, I want to couch this in language that's like, free labor is not a good thing. Like, you know, it's good to be paid for your work. Like, that's so, so important. But at the same time, like, there is a time and a place for, like, if you see an opportunity for you to make a contribution and you think that it could be rewarding for you, then for sure. And I can think of so many things, like, Jenny, would you say, like, particularly, like, in the world of, like, kind of styling and, like, photography, and the wedding industry is particularly kind of interesting because people do these, like, really experimental photo shoots, and there's so much involved, like, from hair to accessories to, like, the flowers, the wedding clothes, the venues. Like, there's sort of, like, so many different ways that someone could get involved, kind of like as a producer. Or
we do quite a lot of editorial shoots. Like, when I ran Hill Street, we had a designer called Rowan Joy there, who's a fashion designer, but she does mostly bridal. And she would do these amazing shoots with a photographer called Paul Marr. But she would bring in, like, Jack Fleuriste, who's a great florist, and you know, even different fashion designers as well. And she does it now, and now I'm involved in it with Scarlett and Bell. And with especially with the photo shoots and things like that, just to get your, if you're a product designer or you make things, to get your product into the shot is a good thing. And then you're associated with everybody that's on that shoot at the same time, and you get to meet people. But if you're not a maker, and you're a stylist or a fashion designer or anything like that, then approaching other people that you admire their work and saying, why don't we do a shoot together and come up with a kind of editorial idea. That's a great way to meet people. But also, I do think it's a really good idea to collaborate, but my idea of how I've collaborated in the past is genuinely just saying, I would like to work with you, or it just happens naturally just by networking. I'm not such a, you know, I'm not like Stacey, where generally I don't have these kind of ideas for a full thing and then approach people and say, come and join me. It happens more organically for me. In that respect. But I would say it was a good idea for everyone to try and work with other creatives.
So interesting. And I guess also, although you say, I know your perspectives will be different within a project as a curator and as a stylist. However, you're both kind of in charge of your own domains, right? So with Stacey, it's the overall picture, and making sure that things are coherent and kind of coming together and working. And then I'm sorry if I'm totally simplifying the role, but you know, it's that kind of overall, like, this is what's happening, guys. And then Jenny, you're kind of really focused in on the floral elements, or, you know, certain aspects of the settings, and really making it feel the way that you envision it to feel. But there's leadership, so much leadership in both of those roles. And I just wonder, do you see yourselves as leaders, or do you see yourselves as part of the team?
I would say I think it's important to point out as well that, like, when you see like a finished catalogue event, whatever it is, like 10% of that labour and hard work is like what you styling or curating, and like 90% of it is problem solving. Like, it's literally like, I've got 99 problems and all of them are this job until this job is finished. I mean, it's just problems. And I think designers are really good problem solvers by nature. And so it's really like a project management thing. So like, I'm not particularly amazing at managing people, but I've got better at it because I've just had to. I've had to get better at managing people. And when I say managing people, that sounds a bit kind of like sort of telling people what to do. It's more just like, and someone was asking something in the thread actually, Sean Bevan was asking like a logistical question about how you like what systems and tools and things you use. And I think like for really complex projects like Dundee Design Festival a couple of years ago, the whole team, we all used Slack. And some people aren't that keen on using Slack, but I think for certain, I don't use it all the time for everything because some clients don't really like, if people don't use it, it doesn't really work. But if you have a team of people and it's a really complex project where you've got producers and manufacturers who are part of the team that are making things, and there's lots of measurements for things flying around, and there's like lots of dates where things need to turn up on time and stuff like that. Things, you know, tools like software like Slack can be super, super helpful. But yeah, I would say that project management and problem solving is such a massive part of it. I really some of it's quite kind of boring, like just like being on top of all your like management systems, like making sure that you've got, you know, I've given up trying to get by on the free versions of things. I just like pay to have Dropbox storage now, and pay to have Google Drive and stuff like that, and pay to have Later, which helps me like, you know, pre-do my social media and stuff like that. Because the pain of not having that is just not worth it, kind of thing. I've totally strayed from the original question, I think.
That's all right. Jenny, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that in terms of like how you see yourself within that dynamic of a collaborative?
I think, well, with the events thing, it is mainly problem solver and people manager, and I think I find it easier with the people than Stacey does. I think that's why we were kind of worked. We did a pop-up shop together once that was it was like a Christmas shop to rival the stupid Christmas market thing, but it was all like local designers and lovely things. And I think Stacey was really good at the beginning getting it all together, but it was the people side of things. It was a real learning curve for Stacey, that one, I think.
Well, it's more like just the public, like just dealing with the public. Jenny's a really great salesperson, like but not in a way that makes it seem like she's kind of like selly, like, you know. And that is what a good salesperson is someone that can just tell you about the product, make you feel welcome, make you feel like really hosted. Whereas I'm like such a kind of like, I want everything to be perfect. So to me, like when people come in and like mess everything up, I'm like, oh, that's so annoying. And Jenny's like, no, they're customers. They're allowed to do that. So yeah.
So yeah, I think I do think people management in event planning, it's people management is like twofold as well, because you've got the client who in the lead up to it is you're working in a team with, but on the day of the event, they're very much enjoying the day, and you're just doing the problems, but you have to you know, what's that thing about expectations? Saying about expectations, can't remember it, my brain's not working. But you know, they'll come up and ask you something absolutely ridiculous that there's no way you can do in 1 minute. So the people management side of that is just squashing those things and saying no, but in a way that doesn't make it seem like a bad thing. And then the other bit is your team of people that you've got working with you on the day to make it happen, to just but not, as Stacey's saying, in a sort of micromanagey way, just to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing and where they're supposed to be. And that's the way that an event will run smoothly, is if you have been a good people manager and project manager. I love having a list and a timeline like well in advance. So, and then I constantly run through in my head, right, this is what's going to happen through the day. And I get that the only time I'll get anxious about a job is if I haven't got that, or if somebody else is in charge of that and I haven't got it and I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to be. That really gets to me. But yeah, I can't remember what the original question was, but
I think you and me, and actually the other person I think of about this as well is Janine Matheson, is like, we're all a big fan of the walkthrough walk through the project from beginning to end. I walk through an exhibition from the point of view of what way does someone come in the door? What way do they walk around the room? How much time are they spending? Are they in a hurry, or do they have a lot of time? There's layers in the exhibition for the person who's in a hurry, and there's more there for the person who has more time. Events, it's like walk through it all. I mean, literally have a, like, you know, an hour before arrival, like, do you have time to have like a chat with the speakers that you've got? And you know, you'd be amazed at the amount of times that I've participated in events and stuff where someone's asked me to be a speaker or something, and they haven't really explained what's going on or hosted it in any kind of significant way. And like, it's actually really easy to do. You know, it's just like everyone wants to feel comfortable, like whether that's someone that's coming into your shop or your exhibition or your event, and like, it's just that walking through. It's literally like you have to kind of visualize just physically moving through the space and what's happening in the break, and where are the drinks or the food, is it easy to get to them, and what, you know, like, I don't know, it surprises me the amount of times that I go to something or I see something that hasn't worked because someone hasn't just done that very practical exercise of just walking through, like understanding how long something takes for someone to experience. Like when COVID first hit, and everyone had to do things like make one-way systems for, like, when Jenny, when you did that Christmas market at Dovecot, and people were like, oh, I much prefer this, it's so less chaotic, because usually people would all be crisscrossing each other and banging each other with their bags and everything, and this way it was like ticketed, only this many people at a time, you all have to go like one direction. So as a consequence of that, I think a lot of people who organise things like that have realised the benefit of like just slow down a bit and think about how people can experience this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely less chaotic. And I guess especially this is all part of the vision, the envisioning, isn't it? Is that building that experience, but also building it in a specific way for each different purpose. It's not just about creating nice experiences. It's actually like, well, why are you here? What are you going to look at first? What are you then what's the narrative of moving around the space and all of that? So it's really interesting to see how COVID's affecting that as well. It must be something that you're both having to consider quite heavily with your events going forward. How is that? I don't want to have too much COVID chat, but I will ask this question before we get to the questions in the chat. So I'll take your questions from the chat, guys. So how have you found that experience of kind of curating with the constraints that COVID presents?
Fine, really, because again, it's just another like problem that you need to solve, and you know, you just sort of like think through how things are going to work. And yeah, it's
like with any venue or anything, you would always have a checklist of restrictions or you know, health and safety aspects. So it is just another one, and it was a bit worse sort of last year when we sort of opened up again for that small amount of time, and it was like a mad rush. We were one of the only places to do an in-person market at Dovecot, and I was a bit concerned about it, but it worked really well, and I had such a good front of house team at Dovecot. They were absolutely amazing and really helpful, and everybody that came along was just really respectful of the rules, and the stall holders were just so pleased to be there and be talking to people, and there was just such a nice vibe about it. But you know, now I think the thing is as well with events or exhibitions or anything in public at the moment, people are either comfortable being there with the masks and the sanitizer and everything, or they're not, and then they won't come, you know. So it's I'm doing wreath workshops this week, and everybody last night had absolutely no problem wearing masks and keeping away from each other, and I had sort of individually wrapped little food bits. It's those kind of things actually that you forget about, and then you're like, oh no, I can't do like a nice platter of food. I'll have to try and make this wrap thing look glamorous. It's not, you know, it's those little things that you start thinking about as you go along, but actually in the long run, it's not that much harder. And I think as well, people are much more enthusiastic at the moment to be out if they want to be. So that helps with the whole atmosphere of everything.
Yeah, we've got an exhibition open at Custom Lane in Leith at the moment. It's called The Future of Home, and it's a big interior design exhibition that was shown at the London Design Festival in September. And it's a beautiful exhibition. It features the work of 15 different designers who are based in Scotland. And the exhibition space in Custom Lane is quite a bit smaller than what we had in London. But it's totally fine. Like, the thing is, Custom Lane have just kind of, they're very meticulous anyway. They're all like really design-led people. They're very sort of meticulous and conscientious about things, and everything's been thought through in terms of the spacing and like the hand sanitizer stations and things like that. And yeah, like, I didn't find the COVID side of it really stressful at all. Even on our little kind of like opening night on Thursday night, the courtyard was next to the exhibition and we had the doors open. So if someone wanted to take a glass of wine and then they're kind of like, oh, I need to take my mask off to drink this, the courtyard's there. Like, everything's sort of like just thinking through like people's comfort, just like prioritizing people's comfort, and people really appreciate that. I noticed that, Anna, there was a question from Beatrice in the thread.
Yes,
this is Stacey's leadership role.
Yes, getting straight in there, get those questions answered. Right, so we have a question from B. So thank you for submitting your question. Would you say you might have days where you have imposter syndrome? And what would your strategies be to fight those days?
I think I do a lot more than Stacey does. I know that Stacey had the occasional wobble, but she's got so much self-confidence, rightly, because she's, you know, got so much experience. And but my imposter syndrome is down to the fact that, one, I've had so many kind of changes of careers, and I started with photography because I studied photography, but then I never got up to degree level, and then everything else with the events and things is just kind of happened, and I've just kind of let it happen, to be where I am now, being an imposter florist. but I think the having a little self chat with yourself and just saying like everybody feels like that, like literally everybody feels like that at some point, but also having really supportive friends like Stacey around you. I've got a really nice close-knit set of friends who all kind of build each other up and everything. And being in a group like Creative Edinburgh or other different community groups is really good as well, because especially if people are honest about feeling like that, I think that can really help.
And I 100% have imposter syndrome. Like, the thing is, it's good to recognize that sometimes it's worth paying attention to and sometimes it isn't. Like, I had a feeling of imposter syndrome when I was doing my PhD, and by the time I finished it, I was like, I just don't feel like I fit in academia. It's just not for me. And that was it was right for me to just recognize that, like, I'm not enjoying this, and I'm drawn to want to go back to curating. And I didn't want to be a kind of academic curator. I wanted to be really hands-on. And so sometimes imposter syndrome can be good for you. And I think a good bit of advice is to think when those thoughts become intrusive, like, you know, try and, like, if it's stopping you from doing something and moving forward, definitely talk to a friend, a supportive friend, kind of build your confidence back up a bit. But also, I think it's really helpful. Someone gave me a bit of advice that's like, you need to think of yourself as the chairman of the board. You're at the head of the table, and all the board members around the table, they can all chip in, they can all say, well, I don't think you're good at this, and I don't think we're good at that, and I don't think you should be doing this, and blah, blah, blah. And those are those people on your shoulder that are invisible people that are kind of like knocking away at your confidence. But you just have to sometimes sort of like assert yourself in the chair and say, okay, well, you've all had your say, but I've assessed the actual evidence here, and I'm, I've assessed that I am more than capable of doing this. I am experienced, or whatever it is. And you have to just sort of take control back. And it can be, you can take control back in little ways. Like for me, it was things like, I sometimes would, if I didn't have a lot of work on and I'd applied for things and not got them, like applied for little jobs or gigs or residencies and got a few rejections in a row, or funding applications or whatever. And then I would see other people that were in a similar field to me on Instagram doing really well. It was a real trigger, like, oh, they're doing really well and I'm just getting left behind. And I think it's really important, like when those triggers happen, like for me, it's really important to just stop looking at it. Like don't drill down and then look at their whole Instagram and just kind of use it to beat yourself over the head. Like the minute I start feeling like that, I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to do something else right now. Even if it's just like watching TV or whatever, it doesn't need to be something worthy. And also just to recognize that you can't get everything, you can't win everything, and that when you don't get something, it doesn't mean you're rubbish or you're not good. It just means that that's just the way it goes sometimes, and it shouldn't put you off trying again. Quite a lot of times I've applied for something and not got it, and then a much better thing came along that I want, that was, like much better, and I was kind of glad I didn't get the other thing because they would have clashed. And yeah, I don't know, I think imposter syndrome's a really hard one, but I do think that everyone has days where they think, this is really hard, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, maybe this isn't for me.
I think that the difference with that, I think you're talking about imposter syndrome and like sort of outsider syndrome. I think it's, you weren't an imposter in academia. You absolutely knew what you were doing. You just weren't enjoying it. And I think that is something you have to recognize in yourself. Like I was not enjoying working in an office, and I didn't understand how I'd got there. Really, I was kind of like, this is. I didn't.
You did apply for the job.
So for me, it was just going, no, this is not what I want to do. And I do have another part-time job as well. I work in my friend's shop, Godiva Boutique, which is independent fashion designers. So I do have another job. Like I'm over 40 now, and I've got like 3 part-time jobs. So, but I'm much happier than I was in a salaried job in an office. Not because I'm not saying anything about Dovecot. It's just that type of job. Mm-hmm. I realised just is not for me, and I don't want to do it for the rest of my life. I'd rather do three part-time jobs.
Yeah,
which hopefully won't be forever, but that's what I'm doing.
No, it's fascinating to hear both of your experiences with imposter syndrome, especially because I know from my experience working at Creative Edinburgh, I know that's something that comes up all the time, and it's very interlinked with confidence, and that impacts everything, let alone your creative work or your business or whatever you're wanting to pursue in your career. So almost utilizing it like a moment to self-check, to use your words, Jenny. I think that's a really good way to kind of turn it around into a more productive feeling. But it's not as easy as that in the moment. So
can I just say something about confidence as well? Because like people say to me, like I grew up in Canada before I moved to Scotland, and maybe it was something to do with like the school system or whatever, but people would often say to me like, oh, you've got so much confidence, you're so confident, blah, blah. But I think like there's loads of things that I've done or I'm doing and I'm not confident about it, but I do it anyway. Like I'm scared of it and I have a lot of self-doubt, and I'll wake up at 4 a.m. like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. But I just do it to the best of my ability anyway. So I don't know if it's like confidence so much as like optimism and perseverance. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. Yeah, you're right. Confidence is such an overarching word in itself. But that self-belief, regardless of how confident you are in the moment, is a different thing. So that's really interesting. Maybe we should have another event all about that. I think that would be other discussion. I don't want to deny this other question coming from Molly before we get to the end of the Q&A, which is, do or did either of you have periods of non-creativity, and how did you tackle that? experience when you weren't working?
Well,
things?
Yeah, I'm a single parent, so my daughter's 16 now, and when she was little, obviously I didn't have much time to do anything for my own practice. But that's actually when I started doing the photography and events photography, because that was mostly weekend work, and then the rest of it was at home, doing editing and things which I could do when she was sleeping, or so that worked for me. But yeah, there's lots of times when I especially when I was in the office and I was just like, oh, I'm working in this really cultural place and I don't feel any creativity at all within myself. And at points like that, I tend to take up like a new hobby, like a craft thing, like embroidering, or I've got like a half-made embroidery over there, and there's a half-made dress that I'm sewing in the other room. I just start doing something to try and kickstart it. I bought like a printmaking kit, but I did start going to look and draw life drawing classes, which were just before lockdown, which were at the Safari Lounge, like after work, and it was all monoprinting, so it was super fast. And you're just sketching and sketching and sketching. And that for me really boosted again my and I was like, oh, I can draw, I totally forgot. And so for me, if I feel like that, I have had it like years at a time, but if I can find something that will just kickstart it. I know Stacey's more of a sort of visual artist, would you say? I don't know, that's not the right word. But for me, finding something I can make with my hands, I did ceramics class as well, stuff like that. Or like sort of jumpstart my brain again to start thinking that way for me.
Yeah. You've always been like a real maker, like, yeah. But I think as well, like, I don't know if this is, like, I think this is really good to hear two people's answers to Molly's question, because when I read Molly's question, it was like, did either of you ever have periods of non-creativity? Like, I would say as well that like sometimes I don't feel like being creative and I don't push it. Like I just do whatever I want. And like, I don't know, like, I think because I went to art school, when I left art school, there was periods of my life where I felt like if I wasn't being a creative, then somehow I was like, I don't know, not reaching my potential or something like that. But sometimes I'm just like, I just want to do something else, like that's nothing to do with anything visual or creative or whatever, and that's totally fine. And I think the last 2 years that we've had, more than anything, has made me realize like you don't really owe anyone anything, and like you don't owe your Instagram feed anything, and you can really just do what you want, and you shouldn't feel any pressure to like be creative or be this or be that. You should just be however you feel.
Absolutely. Well, wow, what a nice way to like kind of tie up the kind of last few bits of this conversation, because that is a really good thing to remember. I know from personal experience as well, those long periods of not making things makes you question who you are as a person as well. I think especially with creativity, it's so ingrained in individuals that, to their core, to their personality, as it's who they are, and it can feel like a loss, or like there's almost like a grieving process that happens when you stop, and I think it's the hardest thing to get going again. But it's also about recognizing, at least in my experience, that the creativity doesn't go away, it's always there. It's just you have to find ways to channel it, and if you don't currently have avenues to pursue, it means that your brain gets a rest and you get to focus on something else, and that can be very, very beneficial. So it's really great to hear from both of your points of view kind of how you've challenged yourselves with that as well. So thank you, and thank you both for being here this morning. I think if there's any other questions, I don't think there's any.
Thanks for the lovely questions as well from your audience. They're really nice.
Yeah, no, great questions, definitely. Caitlin, is there anything else what needs to happen at this point?
I don't think so. I didn't see any questions, and I just want to thank you all so much. I actually found that, I mean, I knew I was going to find it interesting, but I would echo Anna in that I think actually I always find thinking about work really interesting, and like the systems people use, and this idea of like, you know, creativity versus like your admin stuff and all of that. I found that absolutely fascinating. So thank you all so much, and thank you everyone for putting your questions in the chat.